Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have a brand new Jurassic World figure. This is a brand new Mattel figure, and it's our first opportunity to take a look at the Dino Trackers line, as we've got ourselves the Track N Attack Indoraptor. And this is actually probably one of the ones I was most anticipated for, even though we've had plenty of Indoraptors in the past. I just really like the very cool, almost like iridescence type look to this one. Like, it just has such a cool shine and a very cool appearance, and plus it's just awesome to have an Indoraptor back in the Mattel line, as it's been a little while since we had one. You can see the packaging looks really nice as well for the Dino Trackers line, as we've got a nice image over here of Velociraptor Blue and Beta to our left, and kind of like a nice wooded area there in the background behind our Indoraptor. And then of course the classic Jurassic World logo and the Dino Trackers logo. And then if we turn this around and we take a look at the back of the box, you can see that we have an image here of the Indoraptor attacking and killing a dinosaur, as well as a shot over here of two other upcoming Dino Tracker releases, as we've got the Stegosaurus and the Sinotyrannus, and again, showing off the fact that unfortunately the DNA scan code still comes out of the back like it did previously. And then we also have like some really cool tracking headgear included with this as well. So let's pop this out of the box and check it out. So here is our headgear right there, and then our Indoraptor right here, and it definitely looks very, very cool. Again, I don't know that I would say the head sculpt is exactly screen accurate, because I think it's just going to have to remain Marco Make's head sculpt that is the most accurate version out there, but it looks definitely a little different compared to the previous one. Still pretty cool, but the thing that I like the most about it, again, is the coloration. It is just so super nice, so super flashy here in person. Let's go ahead and see how it stands. Stands pretty nicely. I can definitely say the proportions look a little bit off on this one compared to previous releases. I feel like the tail might be a little bit too short on it, and the legs, the feet are huge. The legs just look a little bit strange to me as well. The arms also seem a little bit long. I don't know, maybe it's just the angle that the body parts are at, but it definitely looks a little off as far as the proportions go. But regardless, I'm very excited to take a closer look at this, so let's go ahead and do that right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Indoraptor, you can see that the actual texturing to the skin looks pretty nice overall. It doesn't look bad by any means. It also has the nostrils sculpted out right there. One thing you'll immediately take notice to is the fact that the eyes are very dark, and that's because I believe we have some sort of an action feature where the eyes will light up. Similar to the, I think it might have been the Grab and Growl Indoraptor, I forget the name of that previous version. You can see that we have a nice, again, kind of like a bluish tone for the majority of the body of this one. It has a very cool, again, very iridescence type of a shine, almost like a blue-green. It obviously is a very dark coloration, so it sort of resembles the blackish tone that we saw on the Indoraptor, but also, again, has a very interesting shine to it. And you can see that we have the teeth all sculpted out there with that interlocking style right there. And then once we open the mouth, you can see that the inside of the mouth looks pretty nice. We've got like a nice dark pinkish tone for the inside of the mouth. Pretty nice looking detailing, fairly nice looking tongue. Not a huge fan of the way the teeth look, because they're very obviously like implanted teeth here. I mean, they don't look terrible, but it's mostly like the biggest problem is here looking at it from the outside. You can kind of see how the teeth continue to run along, so it just doesn't look as nice. You can see a little bit of that reddish tone there right behind the eye. Again, the detailing looks pretty nice up here. We have like a seam running down the center of the head, but it still looks okay. As you lead back here into the neck, you start to have those quills, those classic quills. They're kind of flexible, not super flexible, but a little bit. You see more really nice scale detail as we continue to lead down the course of the body. We start to pick up that gold coloration here, and that gold continues to run down. That kind of like gold stripe that we have on the Indoraptor continues to run down the side. As you move down, you can see some nice muscle definition in the arm. One thing that is a little bit of a bummer for this one over the older ones is we don't have arm articulation as like the elbow or anything on this. The only area would be the shoulder joint is the only area of articulation on this newest version, and we're just so used to that kind of like super articulated version we had before, where we had so much articulation on it, and this one definitely doesn't have near as much articulation. The skin texture does look nice though. As we move down the course of the arm, you have more of those quills there, same style that we had on the older one, where we have the quills kind of like flattened out on the arm. Pretty nice looking hand sculpt, although it's pretty huge, I will say that. It still looks okay. You've got some scoots down the fingers, no specific nail paint, but it continues to have that kind of like iridescence type look to the nails as well. As we move back up into the stomach region, you could take notice a lot more so, I think, than you could up here, to the fact that we have kind of like a mixture of gold and orangish tones, which is something you do see on the Indoraptor. It is present up here as well, which I actually almost didn't even pick up on right away, but it's just more obvious down here. But you can continue to see again that the scale detail and everything looks really, really nice. You have that kind of armored type of an area of those scoots running along the back of our Indoraptor. More quills here in the back above the hip region. Again, also sort of flexible, but not super flexible. As we move down, we've got some nice muscle definition, pretty nicely sculpted knee, nice calf muscle as well. And then we get down to the feet, and they are huge, like absolutely massive. We do have articulation in the ankles though, but it's super, super stiff. But again, huge feet on this one. You can see that they're sculpted nicely, which is a plus, but I don't know if it's just my mind playing tricks on me, but I feel like the feet are even larger on this one than the older one. The nails, again, don't have any specific nail paint, but continue to have that kind of like blue-green type shine to them that the entire body has. And then as we lead back up here, you can again see, first of all, some nice skin wrinkles and stuff here, leading back up from the groin into the tail, and then a nice mixture of that gold and orangish tones as we lead out here. You can see that it stops right here, though. As we lead out the length of the tail, there's nothing else out there as far as that coloration, just that kind of, you know, kind of like green-blue type tone. You can see some nice curves to the tail, though, a very snake-like curve as we lead out the length of the tail of our Indoraptor. And then here on the underside, you can again see more really nice detailing. One thing that is pretty cool actually is that the tip of the tail is kind of like a real feel rubber type bendable area of the tail. This part's not, but just from right here out is a little bit flexible. But as you move here along the underside, you can again see like the battery compartment and all those areas. Some okay looking detailing, but a little muted, I would say, on the underside. And of course, you're not going to see much difference over here compared to what we just saw on the initial side. Pretty much the same thing throughout the entire Indoraptor. Again, being a Mattel figure, that's really the type of figure you usually get. You don't get too much difference on one side anymore, so on the other side. But still a pretty cool figure. I think it's not quite as nice as I was hoping, but it's definitely another fun version of an Indoraptor. And then we also have that kind of tracking headgear, which is like a greenish tone, has some pretty nice detailing to it, and all of that fun stuff. Definitely a nice little addition to our Indoraptor, and I do like the fact that they're including stuff like this in the Dino Trackers line, because it's definitely going to be some pretty fun little additions to our dinosaurs. But let's go ahead, throw this on our Indoraptor, and check out all of the action features. So I'd imagine we would probably put this on just like that. Yep. You don't even need to actually connect it here on the bottom. There's an area to connect it, but it actually straps right on there without any type of a problem. So it stays on there pretty nicely, which is cool to see. It's almost a little bit of a hard thing to take off, mostly because of like this ridge above the eyebrow area. It's really prominent on the figure, so it helps it to stay on there quite nicely. But as far as articulation, of course, again, we have the articulated jaw, but the fact that it snaps shut makes me believe it's part of the action feature. We also have the articulation in the neck, which you can see go left and right, and doesn't really go down or up, just mostly left or right. So again, maybe part of the action feature. We do have a button up here to activate it, which we'll do here in a moment. You also have leg articulation in the hip, as well as a swivel in the ankle. And of course, that's the same for both sides. And then you also have tail articulation, kind of goes, you know, all over the place, honestly. Back and forth, up and down, but there's not too much to it. This does not articulate at all. There's not too much to it, but a little bit. And actually, I believe this is probably the fax app code. Yes, it is. So if you would like to add this to your collection, there is the code. Actually, get it a little bit closer for you guys, maybe. There you go. Hopefully you'll be able to get a scan on that. But as far as the action feature goes, again, we've got a button right here in the back. And you can see that we have some noises, the jaw snaps, and we've also got a really cool glowing eye. I actually really like that glowing eye. I love that the eye kind of like blinks with the sounds of our Indoraptor. One more time. So that's definitely pretty cool. The other action feature is a little interesting because it seems like it's just like, I guess, kind of lazy because we don't really have like a button to push or anything. Well, I mean, it's kind of cool at the same time, though. Basically, what you do is you lift the arm, and as you can see, the head will turn, snap, and we make a noise. And of course, the eyes light up. Which actually at first, I kind of thought that might be a little bit lazy, but I kind of like that better, actually, because with an action feature like that, we don't have like a seam or anything for like a button or some weird area to like push, so it kind of doesn't really take away from the sculpt much, so that is kind of actually a pretty nice action feature. But as far as a size goes for the Indoraptor, for a length, you were looking at about 15.5 inches or a little over 39, maybe approaching 39.5 centimeters. And then for a height to the top of the quills, a little over 7.25 inches or about 18.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Peppo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our very cool Indoraptor, and you can definitely see that even though I feel like some of the proportions and stuff are off a little, the size is still quite impressive, and I feel like every Indoraptor, aside from like the minis and 5-inch basic and stuff, they've all been really quite sizable as a whole, and you can definitely see that's exactly the same case here with this version. So here is the Grab and Growl Indoraptor next to our newer version, and one thing that I'm picking up on straight away that I actually thought was a little bit different was the head sculpt. The head sculpt, for the most part, looks pretty much the same, I would say, as far as the appearance, maybe slightly different as far as the sculpting goes. I would say it's not too far off, but very similar. One thing that's definitely a little bit different would be the eyebrow area. Like I had stated, you can see it's a lot lower down, it's a lot higher on the newer version, and of course the teeth are different, and I don't know, looking at it here, the older teeth were pretty ugly, but I just don't like the way that the newer teeth are applied. I think the teeth visually are nicer looking, but the fact that they're like one piece that's really obvious from the outside is definitely a downside as far as that goes. But as far as the size, if we go ahead and get them down here next to each other so we can kind of get like a shot from up above, you can definitely see that they are a very similar size, but the newer one's a little bit bigger. You can definitely see, though, that the older one absolutely had a longer tail than our newer one. And then we've got the super articulated version, and go ahead, get this in here. You can definitely see, again, quite a bit of a size difference between these two. Boy, I did not realize just how ugly the head sculpt was on the older Indoraptor. That thing is actually pretty hideous. I can't wait to actually give this exact figure the Marco Makes treatment and switch this head out and repaint it and everything very, very soon. But you can definitely see, again, there is a huge size difference between these two. And also, again, if we go from up above, like we just did, well, we're not really going from up above, because, oh, I'm going to break his arm, because we're just going to turn them sideways, but look at them from up above. You can definitely see that, yet again, the tail length is a lot more impressive on the older ones, because you can see the hip region is here for the super articulated version, the hip region is here for the newer one, but the tail is still actually a little bit shorter. This tail goes out a little further. So the tail length, and just generally, I think the proportions were a lot better on the older one. Like, just look at the size of the foot sculpt on the older one compared to its body, and then the foot sculpt of the newer one compared to its body. So definitely not the best Indoraptor that we've had. I will say that it is still pretty cool to have the Indoraptor back in the Mattel line, and I love the fact that they've given it this really cool new color scheme, but sculpt wise and everything, I definitely feel like the older ones are superior. So this brand new Mattel Dino Trackers Jurassic World Track N Attack Indoraptor is a pretty cool figure. It's just not quite as great as I was hoping, but then again, I didn't have super high hopes for it, but I had some kind of high hopes for it, and I just feel like the sculpt is a little bit uglier here in person, and the lack of articulation compared to the older ones is a little bit of a downside. Maybe they're kind of giving us a little bit less articulation on this, and hopes to kind of spoil us if they release maybe a Hammond collection Indoraptor at some point, which would definitely be really cool. Even though we already had a super articulated version, I would be a huge fan of seeing a Hammond collection version with better paint apps and stuff than any of the ones that we've had so far. But still, again, sculpt-wise, it's very highly detailed. I will give it that. It has absolutely gorgeous sculpt and detail throughout, extremely vibrant and crisp detailing through the entire figure, and the paint scheme is just absolutely beautiful to look at, even though it's not exactly what you see on the Indoraptor in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. It still looks super cool with that shine to it and is just a pleasure to look at here. It definitely looks really, really neat. And when it comes to an Indoraptor, how many repaints could you really give it to make it not stray too far off from what it actually looks like in the film? I think Mattel did a pretty good job as far as coming up with a paint scheme and a paint job for it that didn't look too far off from the original version, but still looks really cool, and definitely cool enough to make us want to buy another version of the Indoraptor. Again, the articulation is kind of your basic as far as Mattel goes. There's not really too much to it. I do love the light up eyes for it though, which isn't something I always like, but I love the fact that the eyes kind of like go with the sound of the Indoraptor. We also have some pretty cool Indoraptor noises for the figure, and the action features fairly fun. And the addition of that tracking gear is definitely really cool, especially for display purposes and of course playability. But it's a really cool Indoraptor figure, just not as nice as the older ones. However, if you are interested in it, of course I will include a link in the description to where I purchased mine on Amazon. So make sure you check the link in the description. Head on over to Amazon, grab yourself this Indoraptor if it is available. If it's not, again, make sure you add it to like your wish list, and maybe it'll pop up sometime soon and you can get an order in right away for it then. I do believe it's also available to pre-order on Entertainment Earth if you would like to go that route. One way or another though, it's a pretty cool figure and worth picking up if you ask me. So again, check the links in the description, grab yourself this Indoraptor, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.